Welcome to the Backend Guy. I am your host Asher, and in this video we are going to have an overview of Java Spring Framework. We will start from history of Spring Framework. Then we will have a general idea about Spring Framework, what it is used for, what does it offers, what is the difference between Spring Framework and Spring Boot. Then we will create a simple Hello World application using Spring. Let's get started. Before Spring, the mainstream way of writing enterprise applications in Java was to use Java Enterprise Edition or J2EE. In the year 2002, a book, Expert One-on-One J2EE Design and Development was released by Rod Johnson. The main premise of the book was how to use J2EE correctly. At that time, J2EE seems to be very developer friendly. J2EE applications were often slow, unnecessarily complex, and usually takes too long to develop. According to Rod Johnson, the problem is not in J2EE itself. Rather, it was the bad practices. Hence, he released his book to present the idea of J2EE done correctly, alongside with some reference implementations and examples. These reference implementations laid down foundation for one of the most popular Java framework, the Spring Framework. Spring Framework is a lightweight modular framework used to write enterprise applications. At its core, it has dependency injection, which is a fundamental part of the framework. The framework provides modules for web application development, data access support, integration, and testing. Spring Framework, by design, is a modular framework. It means that if you just want to use dependency injection, you can just include module related to dependency injection. It will not add web support or data access or any other unrelated functionality. Spring Framework was first released in 2004. It is now one of the most famous Java frameworks. Along the way, various other projects have been written on top of Spring Framework. These frameworks use core components from Spring Framework and can be used with or without Spring Framework. If you go to Spring website, you will see all of those projects alongside with Spring Framework. Over time, these modules and projects grew larger and managing dependencies and configuration was becoming problematic. For example, if you are using multiple Spring modules or projects in same codebase, you have to manually manage and configure so that they can work together without issues. To overcome this dependency and configuration problem, Spring Boot was developed. Spring Boot, short for Bootstrap, automates managing and configuration of different Spring projects. It makes it easy to create standalone, production-grade Spring-based applications that can just run. Using Spring Boot is now a standard way to start a Spring project. Spring Boot also provides embedded Tomcat or Jetty out of the box, so that a Spring application can be run directly as a jar file. This whole ecosystem of Spring Framework and related projects are often referred to as Spring. When someone says I am using Spring, it usually means that they are using one or more projects from Spring ecosystem. Now let's create a simple Spring application. Our application will include three things. It will serve a static web page, a dynamic web page, and a REST API. To start a new project, Spring provides a web-based initializer. Go to start.spring.io. Here I will choose Maven, and for dependencies, I will choose Spring Web for web development and ThymeLeaf template engine. A template engine works as a bridge between Java objects and HTML templates. Click on Explore to see which dependencies are getting added. In our case, it's just Spring Web and ThymeLeaf. Now click on Generate or press Enter. Your project will be generated and downloaded as a zip file. The project contains a Java class with a main method. This is the entry point for our application. The annotation Spring Boot application is enabling auto configuration so that Spring Boot can automatically find and configure different components that we are going to use later. Next, in the main method, we are initializing and running our Spring application. In directory structure, under resources, we have folder named static and a folder named templates. Static is used to serve static content, and templates will hold HTML templates for dynamic content. Next, we have tests. Spring Boot by default using JUnit 5 for testing. Let's run our main method. Our Spring application with embedded Tomcat server is now running at localhost port 8080. If we go to localhost port 8080 in our browser, then it will return 404. Let's add a static hello world page. In static folder, add a new file index.html and add some basic HTML. Restart the application and then go to localhost 8080/index.html. Our static page is served. By convention, index.html is root page of a website. So if you name your file index.html, you can omit the file name and it will directly served from the root path, localhost port 8080. So far so good. Let's now create a dynamic web page. We will use Spring MVC to create dynamic pages. Let's start from the view. Create helloworld.html under templates. Since we are using ThymeLeaf, we will add a simple HTML that will use ThymeLeaf directives to populate content. This th text will populate the h3 value dynamically. This time will come dynamically from controller. Let's add a controller now. Create a class named HelloWorldController and decorate it with @controller annotation so that Spring can find and register our controller. Next, add our Hello World endpoint. Create a method called Hello World and decorate it with getMapping. This method will return view name. To populate this view with model, we can add model in method param. Finally, add time attribute to model and restart the application. This time in milliseconds is generating dynamically on the server. Now let's create a REST API. To add REST API, we need a REST controller. Add Hello World REST controller class and decorate it with @REST controller. Next, add our API endpoint, API/Hello World. To do that, add a method getHelloWorld that returns a key value pair map. This map will be converted to JSON object. Return instance of map with message and rerun the application. Fire up some API client. I will use Postman. Call localhost 8080/API/HelloWorld. This is our REST API response. That's all for the Spring overview. If you have any suggestions or questions, you can add it in comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.